Okay, let's wrap up chapter 7. Just like with proportions, a question you might ask yourself if you need to make a confidence interval is how many people should I have in my sample? And luckily there is a formula for that. So if we hop over here, I am constructing a confidence interval. I need n because I need to know how many people to have in my sample. You've got your formula right here. So I'm going to put a 7.2 down here because we're going to use this formula in section 7.2. So let's just write down what the formula is. It's z alpha over 2 times sigma divided by e, and then you square that whole thing. Okay? Now notice with this one, you have to know the population standard deviation. So if you don't know the population standard deviation, you should probably overestimate it and make your sample size bigger than it maybe needs to be, because that way you're more likely to have accurate data. So remember, here the idea is I give you a certain margin of error, and that will tell me how many people I need in the sample. So for example, say you're doing a study to say, how long does it take runners to run a race? And do you want a margin of error of 5 seconds? Well, then that's your margin of error, plus or minus 5 seconds. You'd plug in the number there. Let's do an example. And again, notice we're working with a mean here, not a proportion. That's how I know to do the mean one and not the proportion one. And also notice that just like with the proportion one, we always need to round up so that we get our margin of error. An IQ test is designed so that the average mean is 100 and the standard deviation is 23 for the population of normal adults. Notice that keyword population. Find the sample size necessary to estimate the mean IQ score of statistics students such that it can be said with 95% confidence that the sample mean is within 4 IQ points. Assume that sigma equals 23 and use technology. We don't need to use technology because we have the formula. Okay, so here's the idea. For this problem, we're going to assume that the population standard deviation is 23, and our margin of error is 4 points because it's plus or minus 4. We want it to be within 4 of the true mean, plus or minus 4. So I got that number and that number. That means I just need z alpha over 2. So if I need z, then that means that you use the z table. So 95% confidence level. So remember, all confidence intervals are two-tail. So I go to the two-tail column down to 95%. 1.96 is my number. Okay, and you just plug it in. So 1.96 times 23 divided by 4, and you just square that. So here we go. 1.96 times 23 divided by 4, and then we take that to the second power. And so we get 127.0129. And I love this because this is another example of, even though we're only slightly higher than 127, we do need to round up to 128. You must do that. So the required sample is 128 because you have to round up, because that's how you ensure that you get that margin of error that you wanted of 4 plus or minus 4 points. So sometimes you do this and you get a ridiculous number like 23,000. Like maybe you want a really small margin of error, and you get something like you need a sample size of 23,000. So if that's the case, that's going to be too expensive. You might need to be willing to live with a bigger margin of error. But in this case, n equals 128, that's not too bad. You could do a survey for 128 people. So would it be reasonable to sample this number of students? I would say yes. Maybe not at PCC because we don't have 100. Maybe we do have 128 students. I don't know in statistics. Anyway, I would say yes. The number of IQ test scores is a fairly small number. We only have to survey 128 people. That is doable. Okay, that's the end of chapter 7. Congratulations, you made it. I promise this stuff will actually get easier the more we do it. And we've already gone through half of the first page of the flowchart. So I think we're going to skip over the differences. I think that used to be in the course and they took it out, but I can make a video for that if we need to. If you have any questions, please contact me. I know this is challenging and I'm here to help you. I will see you in chapter 8 for hypothesis tests.